So in the newest episode of One Piece, we saw ostensibly the strongest character ever, possibly. I mean, at least by feats so far, because we're finally seeing what Joy Boy is capable of, because we see Emmett, the robot, release a knot stored with his haki, and it blows away the Gorosei. This is a pretty incredible sequence, especially in the anime.
And I get that it's supposed to be like a really epic and cool thing, but in my opinion, Luffy looked terrified. He's like, whoa, what the hell is this? Like the way they zoomed into his eyes. The anime just gives off that feel sometimes, which that's fair.
I guess, I mean, it's supposed to be a very significant moment, because I guess we can get into who Joy Boy was, which, let me mention, we don't really fully know who Joy Boy was, but we have a pretty good idea, especially since we get to see his silhouette most that we've ever seen, and he looks just like Luffy. He sounds like Luffy too. In fact, wasn't his voice like the original Luffy's voice actor or something?
Yes. I believe back in like 1997, 1996, they did like a One Piece one-shot animated episode, just like a trial run, and the Joy Boy voice actor is actually Luffy's voice from all the way back then. So yeah, it further fuels the whole thing where it's like, yeah, Joy Boy's probably just gonna be a carbon copy of Luffy, but just altered slightly. Kind of how like what Rox and Blackbeard are like related. It's like, okay, they look exactly the same, but like a small twist. I think Joy Boy's gonna be the exact same way with Luffy. I mean, hell, we got like Lily and Vivi looking like identical twins out there. When we see her in Imu's room, it's like, yeah, like we're gonna get that with Luffy here. Hell, even Emmett says, whoa, I thought you were a Joy Boy for a second. Like I was mistaken. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty damn identical.
I wouldn't even be surprised if Joy Boy winds up looking like the character from Romance Dawn, the prototype of One Piece, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like 800, 900 years ago, there was this guy by the name of Joy Boy. He is said by Vegapunk to be the first pirate ever. And judging from how Emu reacts to this, seemingly Emu's nemesis, maybe even more powerful than Emu, because Emu, the seemingly final villain, the controller, you know, the devil ruler of the world, is scared of this. Holy crap, so scared, and it's so powerful that it's like de-transforms them, and then they go back to Mary Joie. That's how powerful just releasing his Conqueror's haki from Emmett's knot is. Let's also go back to that sequence. In this flashback to the Void Century 800, 900 years ago, he's talking to Emmett and he says, remember Emmett, only when the time is right, I've tied a knot of my most powerful haki and locked it inside your body. You're going to keep living long after I'm dead. There will come a day when I can't help you anymore. And when your life is in danger or someone else is in danger to whom you want to protect, that's when the time is right. Go ahead and untie that knot. And that begs the question of like, how did he know? Now, I mean, I don't think he specifically knew, like, hey, you know, in 800, 900 years, there's going to be this guy, Monkey D. Luffy. He's going to look just like me. He's going to need your help against the Gorosei, who we're fighting right now. Yes, it's implied that the Gorosei existed back then, and they had fought against Joy Boy since Saturn recognizes Joy Boy in Luffy. They've been kept alive by Emu's devil magic or whatever. Does Joy Boy have himself like crazy observation haki to where he can see hundreds of years into the future like Charlie from Fishman Island?
Oh, no.
Or is there like another Charlie type character that existed during the Void Century? Because seemingly they have prescience of some extent. They know that stuff was going to happen in the future.
Personally, I don't think Joy Boy had observation haki so crazy he could see like 800 years into the future. I think he simply believed in the will of D, and especially when it comes to Emmett, right? I think he was just giving a gift to a friend. He probably didn't know exactly what it was going to be used for. It was just like, hey, I'm not going to be here anymore. You take this gift so that I can help you again one day. I wouldn't be shocked to imagine that most of Joy Boy's crew that survived throughout the years have a similar item from Joy Boy too. I don't think Emmett was the only one. I think we'll go on later and we'll see more of Joy Boy's belongings that he gave to his Nakama, if they're still around, of course.
I mean, the straw hat itself is one of those items. It seems like Emu might even have the original Joy Boy hat, possibly, because they do have a straw hat in Mary Joie. But also, speaking of Emu, that's what Joy Boy's all about. Like, that's what the Void Century was essentially about. It was like Davy Jones and Joy Boy versus Emu. And I think that's possibly even why they're talking about Joy Boy dying in the flashback. Like, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to die. And he's not talking about like of old age. It seems like he knew what was going to happen. Like, Emu was eventually going to defeat him or something like that. Like, it was a foregone conclusion. I could be wrong about that. I mean, also we see Emmett saying, I'm sorry, Joy Boy, that I couldn't make you king. Implying that like, I'm sorry that you lost to Emu, or I'm sorry that I couldn't help you beat Emu, because if Emu lost back in the day to Joy Boy, then the world wouldn't be the way that it is. So that has something to do with that. And the whole hockey is just, I guess, him assuming, hey, Emu is going to live indefinitely. Seemingly. Maybe he knew what was going on with Emu that allowed them to live for so long. And he was like, well, Emmett, you're a robot, which technologically still unexplained, but it goes back to that Great Kingdom technology that seemingly lives on through Egghead. But he knew that Emmett's power source or whatever was going to let him live indefinitely or just a very long time. So he was like, hey, this battle against Emu is going to continue for many centuries, and you're going to be around at that time, and there will be a successor to me. And, it's also even kind of implied that maybe Joy Boy himself, along with Davy Jones, started like the Will of D. Like the D could mean two things, dawn and dust, something like that, bringing the dawn, bringing the dust. But maybe Joy Boy knew that like, hey, there will be someone who inherits my will in the future, whether it be Roger, whether it be Shanks, whether it be Luffy. They're going to need your help, because the Gorosei and Emu, they're still going to be ruling the world at that point. And eventually they're going to need your help to take it down. So here, take this hockey knot, which this is the strongest thing we've ever seen so far in the series. Like, even by current manga standards with what Emu has done at Elbaf, I don't think any single character, not even Rocks, has surpassed this level of power yet. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I agree with that easily. Yeah, Joy Boy's hockey here is just so immense. I mean, just the way he was able to send all 5 Gorosei essentially back home into their human forms, which is something Luffy wasn't able to do after the course of like 10 episodes. Yeah, Joy Boy is a different beast, and it makes sense. I don't think anybody's gonna be mad at that. Like, hey, the original protagonist from 900 years ago who started the Will of D, believe it or not, he might just be number 1. Yeah, I don't think anybody would be too upset.
That's a great way of putting it. Joy Boy is the original protagonist of One Piece. If Sun God Nika himself wasn't the original one, then it is Joy Boy, because seemingly Joy Boy's story is what One Piece is ultimately about. Right? I mean, it's just unfinished Joy Boy's business. That's what.
Yeah, we're looking for his treasure even. I mean, the One Piece, the Laugh Tale, that's something Joy Boy left there. It's all about him.
That's a great point, because Vegapunk in this episode says that, whoever finds the One Piece, I'm paraphrasing, necessarily isn't who Joy Boy wanted to find it. And then we see like multiple options, which we'll talk about in another video. But yeah, the One Piece itself, the title of the series where this all started with, it is Joy Boy's treasure. Take that for what you will. I mean, Oda said that it will be literal treasure, but it's also going to be more than just that, of course. But yeah, Joy Boy is One Piece. So if you're curious, like that why this is so significant, that's because that. So what if I told you that Emu may have been inherently like a good guy, or at least kind of, like maybe Emu had good intentions and they're actually trying to like protect the earth? Well, we're gonna be talking about that, because today I got Dax, Sake, and Sai. So let's start with Dax first, because somebody brought your video to my attention about Emu maybe being the protector of the earth in the first place. Just like real brief, it seems like Emu maybe had possibly good intentions, because the Earth, or the blue planet as it's known in One Piece, it's like super valuable, because we already know from Manel's cover story that there was like the winged race that came down from the moon, maybe even before the Void Century, most likely before the Void Century, because I think they were already referred to as like ancient people or whatever. Their place ran out of resources and they came down. And from the Harley text and the murals, we saw that in the first world, people were like harvesting the forbidden flame or whatever, the earth energy from inside, and then they had the factories and everything, which parallels to what was happening with Kaido, parallel to what was happening on Caribou's cover story with that other place that he went to. I forget the name of it. So it seems like what Vegapunk was saying about he doesn't know which side was right, which side was wrong, maybe it plays into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big thing. I think the Vegapunk lines are a major hint that, like, we might think that the world government, or the 20 kings at the time back then, were the bad guys, right, going against the evil guys, but I think at this point we can say it's not that clear-cut, and not saying that Emu is for sure a good person either. Maybe it's a little bit of a mixed bag, where Emu had good intentions but did it in a bad way, which is something we've seen a bunch of times. You think about Big Mom, who wanted to have a country where every race could live, but she obviously wasn't doing that in a good way. So that's a trope that Oda's done a bunch of times. And as far as kind of was Imu the protector of the world, I think you were kind of hitting the nail on the head with the moon situation, because I think that's a huge parallel, because they ran out of resources, which technically I think is more so like the energy, which does tie to resources, because you can see in the moon mural panels that we got on the NL cover story, the first one shows like that little energy orb powered up, and then in the next one it's powered down and they're all leaving. And then even in Anel's cover story, you saw him go in and just blast the place with electricity, and then it all turned back on. So we can pretty much presume, okay, they ran out of power. And if you look at the moon mural, there's some weird kind of ties to the Elbaf mural. Whenever they're pulling energy up from the Forbidden Sun, the center of the earth or whatever on the mural, it looks like there's like this little like track, this little thing they're walking on that looks very similar to the one on the moon mural where they're building the automata. And so I definitely believe there's an interplay there where the idea from the Void Century was probably the Earth God or the leader of the Ancient Kingdom, whoever the bad entity was siphoning out all the energy for their own, use from the planet and putting the Earth on basically the same trajectory that the moon was on, and where they would have ran out of resources and ruined the planet. And so Imu or the 20 Kings may have stepped in like, whoa, we do not want this to happen. The Earth is way too important. There's not a lot of planets in the universe that can do the same things as Earth, because even if you go and look at Skypiea, one thing they talked about was that Verth was really important because it grows crops, right? They can't grow that in Skypiea because the sky clouds only sustain crops. They don't germinate the crops. So if you don't have the earth or Verth to start with, you can't grow anything. And if you can't grow anything, you don't have food. And if you don't have food, you all die pretty much. So I think that through line there is that much like how the Skypeans worship Verth, even making a statue out of it, which was kind of the reason I put that on the thumbnail for that video, maybe Imu was kind of in a similar boat where they recognized, oh yeah, Earth is really, really important. We cannot let this get ruined. And that's why Imu is, kind of ruling with an iron fist, you could say, not to be hurtful, but because I know if other people get in charge, they might ruin this place and then everybody's dead. So I'm actually doing a good thing. So that's kind of where I see Imu's place in the story currently.
It's funny, I've talked to Doc so many times, so I already kind of knew where he was going with that. But when it comes to like Imu being good, I do think that's what Oda's going to go for. Mainly because even in the most latest SBS, he talked about celestial dragons. And he's like, yeah, celestial dragons, I like to think we all have a little bit of that in us as well, right? We all have like that inherent greed. And when it comes to like, the people from the moon coming down, Imu wanting these resources, Imu wanting to protect the Earth, I think that makes sense. Like, we don't know what the Ancient Kingdom was like. And who's to say that, like, Imu defending his own country, protecting these 20 kingdoms, like that's any less worth it than the Ancient Kingdom protecting themselves? We don't really know, like, what all that is about yet. And also, we don't even know what kind of promises Imu had, right? Because we heard about Davy Jones's promise. We heard about Joy Boy's promise. I guarantee that there's an Imu promise out there somewhere that he's trying to fulfill. And that could do with Imu's perfect world. We haven't seen it yet, right? Imu is still working on it. And, that sounds crazy considering the fact that Imu wants to sink the world, but maybe there's a deeper meaning to it. Like, we really do not know the reason why, and it's too early to judge. I mean, hell, even when Shaka told, I believe it was Frankie, Sanji, Robin, and Nami, as well as Usopp. I think that's like the whole cast right there. I think Brook was there too, maybe. But they were talking to them about like his hypothesis about the Void Century and what might have happened. We didn't see it as the audience. But when we came back, yeah, like, I think Usopp was like very shocked by it. He's like, what the hell? But Frankie, his reaction was, oh, how romantic. And it's like, wait a minute, like, what did he tell him about? Like, what was there for Frankie to say, oh, that's a romantic story? Which we know, like, in One Piece, romanticism is like very different from like, oh, romance. Like, oh, it's two people falling in love. When it comes to that, it's more like an adventure. And, it goes back to Nolan and Calgara. One of my favorite things, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but the chapter title was like, To Be Hidden Underneath the Clouds, Two Halves of a Moon. And that is like a 2,000-year-old poem that nobody knows who wrote it. And it's about two people wanting to meet again one day. And then we go to the Harley text, and it's like, we get the whole line where it's like, oh, they'll never meet. Maybe one day they'll meet. And it's like, yeah, I think it's going to be something with that. There's going to be some sort of promise that Imu's trying to fulfill. I do not think they're going to be a true evil. And if they are true evil, that's only current day Emu. We've seen, even throughout like real life, where over the course of time, people get more and more corrupted the longer they're in power. Like, for the world government, I do not think that they started bad. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 bad seeds, but I do think they started with good intentions, and then over the course of the years, which we heard from either Papagu or Hachi at Saboti, but they're like, yeah, each generation of celestial dragons, they get worse than the last one. So I think that's simply what it is.
I think you guys are spot on. Emu probably didn't start off inherently bad. Maybe they were like an activist to some extent, because like the ancient kingdom was super advanced. It's essentially like what Egghead kind of was. And obviously the world isn't like that anymore for a specific reason. Like, technology is very rudimentary. It's kind of like that 1700s through 1800s type of, with very sparse type of stuff that only specifically the world government will use for, I don't know, controlling or whatever. But everything else is just, boats and, stuff like that. And it's because Emu wants it that way. I guess because they saw that the ancient kingdom, that's not good. You're not supposed to be that advanced. You're supposed to keep it in a very specific type of way. And long story short, maybe Emu realized that they weren't strong enough to overcome the ancient kingdom, Davy Jones, Joy Boy, and all that, without going to an alternative power, which could have led to them being evil. And Dawn and Dusk actually discovered this, but the book that Emu pulls out when Bragi like grabs them in Elbath, it's like a grimoire essentially. That might be like where all of this starts. Like, that might be the source of Emu's power, because also when Emu like summons that sigil with the pentagram, you see like those weird letters or the markings around it. And going back to Anel's cover story, which we love, when he looks at one of the murals there, we see pretty much the same wording or the same markings there. And I don't think it's a coincidence. It probably means that this abyss magic is like coming from the moon. And then that makes me think like maybe the devil dragon power is like from the moon. Like, I don't know, Emu summoned this devil from the moon or whatever, and then it like possessed them or something and made them evil. Because also, like, going back to the Harley mural, like, you see that devil dragon fighting the earth serpent, and the earth serpent fire thing is on the side of the people harvesting all the stuff from the earth. So it's like, this is coming from the moon trying to overcome whatever they're doing, and, they don't want that. So then we go to the second world, which is the Void Century War, and it seems like Emu has that power of the dragon, and the dragon no longer exists. So in a roundabout way, I guess that's what happened. Emu was overcome by that grimoire devil magic and then just became evil, but had good intentions initially, and now they're just, psycho, authoritative, totalitarian regime.
Yeah, we talked about this before the video started, or before we got on the call, that I had never even noticed that the same kind of language was on the moon mural, but I love that connection, because I think something that Oda is kind of trickling towards here is that, we're looking at Emu's powers as like some kind of demon magic, some kind of underworld, evil, just something new, right? Some kind of like loosely defined magic system. But I think while I do think that's partially true, I think it's also going to be tied down to science in some way. And the fact that you just brought this up in regards to the moon mural, where the point of it is that they were really high tech, right? They were very advanced, kind of like the ancient kingdom probably is. I think part of the story, at least, is going to be that the ancient kingdom may have figured out this dark magic stuff because of how high tech they were. And then Emu might have been like, all right, well, instead of you having it, right, and using this, I'm going to figure it out, because then I can take you over, sort of thing. And then we got to start figuring out, okay, well, what is kind of the basis of these powers then, if it's like a mix between science and dark magic, or, the afterlife or something like that. I feel like there's a good tie here to the mural, because did you notice on the mural, like when they're bringing up the energy from inside the earth, on the other side, there's people going down with halos on their head. It's always made me wonder, like, are those people going down and then, like, coming back to life because they're getting Forbidden Sun, right? Like, are the people who are coming up with it on the other side people who just got revived by going down there? And so then, it makes me wonder, is there a connection between the Forbidden Sun, which is this really strong power source that's powering everything, and kind of the afterlife? Is the idea that, like, soul power is the basis of all this. I feel like that's maybe what we're trickling towards, because you look at Brook, right? He died and his soul went to the literal underworld and then came back, and he also saw these circles during his time skip. So I think there's an inherent connection between all that. So I think the idea is just science kind of uncovered, oh wow, you can do this crazy magic stuff if you are doing it the right way. And then Emu's like, I'm gonna take that. I don't want anyone else to know that exists, right? That's too dangerous. We're stopping there. I'm taking over. So that's sort of where I see this all going.
Oh yeah. I mean, even going back to like soul energy, right? It could be a very Nolan and Calgara-esque situation, which I always bring it back to that too, right? I think it's a very important arc. But when Nolan showed up, he saw that Calgara was about to sacrifice, was it his sister? Or his lover? His daughter. His daughter, yeah.
Moose.
He was going to sacrifice his daughter. And, you know, Nolan had to stop that. And it's like, maybe it's the same thing here where Emu saw the human sacrifices. And he's like, hey, maybe we don't use this energy source. Maybe we shouldn't do this. And then that's where we get magic stepping in, right?
Yeah, but ultimately, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. I think it makes sense, or it would just be good narrative-wise, that Emu isn't just, you know, typical despicable villain just doing everything because they're evil. It's like they had good intentions at first, but then, you know, along the way they just fell off. Did you guys like the thumbnail of the video? Because it's pretty interesting, right? The prospect of Dami Reversy Gear 5 Luffy. Now, some of you are thinking like, wait, is this going to happen? Did it already happen? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, because that would be pretty wild if Luffy could get Dami Reversy, because I know a lot of us probably thought about that, but let's just first back up a little bit. So Dami Reversy is like this crazy ability that Emu can do, where maybe they have to make this Kuruma contract thing and then create a sigil and then dunk you in it. Sometimes they kind of have to do that. They did it with Dorian Bragi on Elbaf, but then it seems like with Rocks, maybe they just injured him and then made his mind succumb to it and then just turned him into a demon that way. It still remains to be seen how it fully works, but it's just this crazy ability where Emu could just make you a subservient demon, and you get stronger from it too. But we don't know anything else besides that. So like, can they just do it to anyone? That brings up the question, can they do it to Luffy? What do you think, Sai? Can Luffy beat Dami Reversy?
I don't think so. Like, we haven't seen, and this is a small one, but we haven't seen any Devil Fruit users get Dami Reversi'd. And a theory that, you know, I've seen floating around and I kind of agree with is that maybe because you have a devil fruit, you can't turn into a devil. I think that could be a possibility. And of course, when it comes to Nika, I think a lot of people view Nika as a hard counter to Dami Reversy. It's like this full white form versus the full black form of the Dami Reversy. So it's like, yeah, like maybe because Luffy's so white, he can't get turned black, which sounds crazy.
It's just the colors we're talking about, the literal spectrum of light that we perceive, and that's it.
I will say this though, when Rocks got turned, which I do think Rocks, you know, Luffy level character, if not beyond. So it's like, okay, like strength isn't a factor. One big thing was that people were wondering if you had to be in the right headspace. Like, okay, if you get rage baited by Emu, you can turn, which we did kind of see, right? Emu was like, oh, like, you're kind of stubborn, aren't you? Like, while he was like penetrating him. And then Emu was like, hey, I'm gonna control Harold next. Harold's an idiot. And then Rocks got really mad, and then that's when he fully turned. So if rage baiting is it, Luffy's cooked. You know, people like to imagine Luffy's this stoned guy, you know, nothing's gonna phase him. And in Gear 5, that could be kind of true, but regular Luffy gets rage baited easily. The minute you talk mess about his friends, you know, something he likes, food, Luffy's gonna be in rage mode. Like, so if it's rage baiting and the Devil Fruit thing is not a factor, Luffy's cooked. Yeah, he's a prime candidate to get Dami Reversy, in my opinion, if he didn't have the Nika fruit.
Yeah, if you just say Shanks is ugly or something, then it's game. You'll instantly Dami Reversy him.
You're done.
And speaking of the Dami Reversy, you were saying with the colors, the Dami Reversy is based off of the game Reversy or Othello. We talked about this in another video, but it is black versus white. Just the colors, okay? That's what it is. Just black pieces versus white pieces. And Luffy, super white, the color, and that probably has something to do with it, because also Emu completely black. Now, probably not Emu's true form, although that would be hilarious if that's just what Emu looks like and it's not a silhouette. That probably has something to do with it. Like, maybe he is just immune to Dami Reversy. Now, you also brought up an interesting point about how Devil Fruit users might be immune to it because they have a Devil Fruit in them, and that is very likely a possibility because we've only seen non-Devil Fruit users succumb to the Dami Reversy so far. That would be interesting if that's it, but also, even if that is not the case, I just think Sun God Nika is probably just a hard counter to it because of just how it works. And also because Emu is like terrified of Joy Boy. We've never seen Emu be this scared of anyone or anything ever. Like after Joy Boy's hockey got released from that knot on Egghead, they started sweating. They were like gonna have a panic attack. And it's like, oh, because Joy Boy or just Sun God Nika is probably like the hard counter to what Emu is. I mean, that kind of has to be the case, I guess. So if that is what's going on, then it makes sense that Luffy would be immune to this. What if Luffy, like, let's just say he can beat Dami Reversy, especially in Gear 5? Yeah, what happens in that scenario?
I mean, I'm sorry, guys. Like, the Straw Hats, they're losing that fight. We're already debating, or at least I've seen people debate, could Luffy run the Straw Hat Gauntlet? Could he beat Zoro, then Sanji, then Frankie, Robin, Brook, Usopp, Chopper, Nami, Jinbei? And I think he could. You know, if it's like a 1v1, I think he could run that gauntlet. If he was Dami Reversied, it makes that gauntlet so much easier. You know, what was once a debate is a clear-cut answer. So yeah, if he got domied, we just have to find a way to break him out at that point. Like, the whole objective of Elbaf would shift. Which, granted, we're already trying to find a solution to Dami Reversy in the first place. So maybe this is what really forces our hand. We're like, oh, hey, at first we were just beating up these giants, but now we actually have to help them and, you know, find the cure for our captain. But I just don't imagine that it would go down well. Like, we don't have a Garp and Roger on this island to stop Luffy. And the thing is that, like, when you get domied, you get stronger. You get stronger, you get bigger, and you have no reservations when it comes to fighting people. Like, Rox didn't want to fight Garp or Roger, but he was doing it. He was going on 1000%. He was just crying in the meanwhile. So Luffy wouldn't like stop and hesitate like, oh, this is Zoro. I don't want to hit him. No. He's gonna slap Zoro. You know, he's gonna punch Nami. So yeah, it's a disgusting thing. I think Luffy by far would be the strongest person on this island, minus Emu, of course. Like Loki wouldn't even stand a chance.
I was going to bring up Loki. You said that, like, we're looking for the cure. So far, it seems like the cure is just beating the crap out of you with, like, immense amounts of Conqueror Hockey. Because that's what Garp and Roger did, and it seemed like it undid the Dami Reversy in Rocks, right? I mean,
there's got to be some other answer. There's no way. Just, yeah, I remember, hey, it's like the immortality thing, right? Oh, Chopper's like, how do we beat immortality? How do we do it? Scopper knows. I'm gonna go to Scopper. Hey, guys, it's Conqueror's Hockey. Okay, how do we break the curse? How do we stop them from turning into demons? Well, hear me out. You just beat them up. It's like, okay, there's gotta be like another way to do all of this. There's no way that's gonna be the case. Yeah, I mean, sure, that's like one answer. I think there's gonna be a second answer too for people who don't have Conqueror's Hockey, for people who can't beat Dami Reversy. Like, there's gotta be some sort of gimmick.
Because instead of him just running the gauntlet in singles matches, it would have to be Zoro, Sanji, Scopper, Loki, Jinbei, all teaming up, all using mass the way that Garp and Roger did. I mean, they all don't have Conquerors, but the ones that do are just going to have to all just gang up on Luffy, beat the crap out of him until he is Dami Reversed.
I don't know if they could do it, man. Like, I mean, what? Zoro is the only confirmed Conquerors, minus Loki on the island. Oh, well, okay, Scopper. Scopper has it too. I mean, but Scopper's out of commission. Loki's wounded. Zoro is up there, possibly find the God Knights right now. Like, I just can't imagine we have enough resources to divert to Luffy if he got domied. And, you know, hopefully Sanji gets Conqueror's Hockey, but even then, he's, like, fresh with it. There's no way they could, like, master it and, you know, look at each other and say, hey, guys, let's put all of our mass into this attack and let's beat Luffy. No way.
Yeah, it's unlikely right now. I guess they would be doomed. That would be really funny to see. Just a real goofy Luffy demon. Because he would still be goofy, I guess. He would just be evil. That would be fun. I'd like to see that.
It would kind of be up to Emu, huh? Well, like, imagine Emu's like, okay, quit the joking. Like, stop laughing, Luffy.
Be evil and serious.
Lock in. If Luffy did get Dami Reversied, would the Straw Hats would know, But Luffy doesn't have the same liberties that Rox would have, where Rox could use the voice of all things to talk to Roger and Garp, because nobody else on this island has the voice of all things. Confirmed yet, at least. Like, maybe Loki has it, we don't know. Maybe Zoro has it, we've never seen it, it's never been hinted. So it's like, if Luffy's screaming out with the voice of all things, nobody's gonna be able to hear it.
Unless, just suddenly they unlock it at that point. Because Zoro has the breath of all things. If that is the same as the voice,
so funny.
Who knows?
Yeah, it was never revisited ever again, ever since Alabasta. Just, hey, he can hear and, see the breath of living things. Yeah, forget about that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to retcon that. Done. Just forget that happened. All right, so we're going to be reacting to Mr. Morge's new Void Century theory. And it essentially boils down to Oda has been telling us the same story over and over again throughout the series, which is just what happened during the Void Century. Because now we have all of the pieces knowing that Davy Jones was actually the king of the world, quote unquote, at one point. And when Rock says that he was like the king of the world, he probably just meant like he was the king of the ancient kingdom or the great kingdom. Therefore, that ruled the world because that was kind of like the center of it. Essentially, at that point, it was like the premier society. Okay, so every story, or almost every arc, we have like the king, everything's going great, and then we have the usurper, or the person who overthrows the king in some underhanded way. We have the princess, and then we have the great warrior, who is a part of the story and usually winds up helping the king or going against the usurper in some way. So the king is Davy Jones in the Void Century. The great warrior is Joy Boy. The usurper, or the villain who overthrows the king in some underhanded way, is Emu. And then the princess is Lily. So that's essentially what happens. Like, everything's great with the ancient kingdom, the great kingdom back in the day. We also talked about this in a previous video, but they have premier technology. It's even possible that they're like abusing the great energy source from the earth in some way, as we saw in the first world in the Harley mural. And Emu didn't like that. And then, eventually got the 20 kingdoms to conspire with them to overthrow the Davy Jones's empire. And the way that they did it, we probably already saw it in God Valley. They just Dami Reversi'd them. Like they did with Rocks. As we also saw in Alabasta with the Mani Mani no Mi. We also saw the Mani Mani no Mi again in Wano. We also saw in Dressrosa Doflamingo using the puppeteer aspect of his strings to take over King Riku. So that's probably what led to that. And Joy Boy, is the heroic person who fought back against them. And Lily was the princess who helped everything come together, essentially, ultimately. So what do you guys think about all of that?
Well, my first thought is, Oda definitely does his parallels and inversions quite a bit. So, Morge always has a lot of great theories. So I definitely get where he's coming from, and I think he's definitely right about some parts of it, maybe even all of it. But I do have a few maybe caveats just to consider about some of this, which is for Davy, for one thing, like we also know that he was a pirate. And so how does that kind of work given that Joy Boy was the first pirate, right? So is the idea that like Davy was the king and then somehow lost his spot and then Joy Boy came around and then Davy became a pirate after that? Like there's just kind of like, the timing of events there I think is a little odd. And then also about Lily, like we know that Lily was also one of the 20 kings, like on par with Emu in that sense where they were like allies. And so that's like a little bit of a difference towards the typical princess idea that Oda does. But it is actually kind of similar to Vivi's situation because Vivi was also technically like a co-conspirator with Crocodile because she was in Broke Works originally, right? And now she was doing that to, take down Crocodile, but she originally was technically on the same team. So I don't know if that's maybe what Lily was doing. Also, Broke Works technically had like 20 top people. I think technically they went past 20, but there was like 20 main, sets of people were like 10 pairs of people. So that's an interesting parallel. So I guess, I think Morge is definitely on the money with a lot of it. I just kind of wonder, given those caveats, how Oda's going to change it a little bit. Because he does do that too, where yes, you can see the similarities, but he adds enough spice to kind of, just change it up a little bit so it feels fresh. So I just wonder where the twists and turns are, with the story.
Yeah, and Dami Reversy, that's such a fun way to get people on your side. So, and Morge is right, manipulation has been there through almost every arc of One Piece in some form or fashion. I mean, hell, even going back to Alabasta, while they didn't have like a puppeteer there, Crocodile used Bon Clay's Mane Mane no Mi to manipulate the people of Alabasta into thinking that King Cobra was a bad guy, right? They're like, oh, like, here's a King Cobra and he's playing around with dance powder. Like, that's a great form of manipulation. There's a 100% chance, in my opinion, that we're going to see something like that in the Void Century. But of course, you know, like Dax said, I think it's going to be something a little bit different. It's going to be something that we just don't expect.
And one thing I really want to build off of that is, you know, Blackbeard also has a clone fruit user on their crew. It's not the Mane Mane no Mi, but it's the nine-tailed fox fruit with Katarina Devon, who also copied Saturn's form. So there's definitely some through line there where, like, is that going to be the ultimate trump card that gets Blackbeard into power? Like, I don't know if Oda will go that far, because that's like kind of like a complete retread of Alabasta and Wano a little bit. But maybe, and people have talked about this theory a lot, maybe that'll at least let them control, you know, the Seraphim or something, which will help them take over Marijois. So like there's, you know, it's kind of the same but a little bit different. And that's kind of what I mean by, like, I know these similarities are here, and Morge is at least 80 or 90% on the money. I just wonder where the twists and turns are, because there's going to be some for sure. Oda's saving some special sauce here for the end, you know, so I just wonder what that is.
Dude, at what point do we have like some sort of, you know, copycat metal detector? Like, yo, we gotta stop being fooled by these imposters. Like, essentially Oda's playing a big game of Among Us, and it's like, yo, like, at some point we gotta really lock in and stop falling for these shenanigans.
Mm-hmm. You know, that was the point of the X on the arms, right? In Alabasta,
yeah.
So they knew who was the real one, and that ended up helping. And I think that's probably where the D initial ties in somehow. And like, that's like a looser way of doing it. Like, if you mark it on your body, that's a way easier way to tell who the clone is. But like, I don't know how the D necessarily will fit into all this, but I definitely think that's where it originated. Like, okay, we need some way to differentiate who the true, you know, members are of this alliance or whatever. And that's where it started. And again, I don't know where that's really going to end. I feel like with Lily, we kind of saw that with Emu, where Emu's like, what did she write her name as? Like, what was the full name? And then Cobra says D, and immediately Emu's angry. That was like the guarantee for Emu that Lily was truly a traitor, that she had the D. So it's like, okay, that, you know, now that tells me what side she's truly on. So that's definitely something Oda's going to build upon here with the Void Century for sure.
A nice twist would be if the symbol they used was the hoof of the celestial dragon. Like, that was a way to distinguish friends. And of course, you know, like, because 900 years passed, it's like, oh, the symbol we were once proud of now goes on every single slave. You know, it's just one of those things about like time distorting the original meaning of works.
Yeah.
Like, the hoof of the celestial dragon could have been a really cool like thing that everybody had, and nowadays it's like, oh, you get it, and it's like it's a curse. Like, that means you're a slave, buddy.
Or if it's not that, it could also be the mark of the abyss, also, right? Because that's like what lets you use the pentagram.
That too.
So I wonder if there's like a layer there. You know, Shanks even had something on his elbow, right? That like, we're like, what is that? Summers also had a mark on his elbow. They're different, but when I see tattoos on the elbow for people that, you know, spent time in Marijois, I'm like, okay, they're getting out. There's a connection. I don't know what it is, but there's a connection. So I don't know.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's ultimately it, guys. Check out Mr. Morge's video for the full breakdown of the Void Century, but it is just something really interesting to look at. I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, because I do agree with you. I think he's 80% of the way there. There is some missing connective tissue there, especially with motives and everything, and how the ancient weapons come into play. Because also, I don't think the ancient weapons were made during the Void Century, because like when Robin is like discovering the ancient weapons essentially at like Skypiea, reading off of the poneglyph, it's already called like the ancient weapons, so they were probably inherited. And I think Davy Jones was probably using them to some extent, and maybe that has something to do with how, you know, the Dami Reversy stuff worked as well. So there's been a lot of debate lately as to like who the final villain of One Piece is going to be, and we've got two candidates for sure. Obviously Emu is the top candidate, but then we also have Blackbeard. So it's like, who is going to be Luffy's final opponent, or who's going to be like the overall final boss of the series? Who have you thought was going to be the final villain?
My answer hasn't changed since the day we met him, but Blackbeard. I think it's going to be Blackbeard for sure.
So any specific reason as to that? Because something has to happen to Emu.
Yeah, something has to happen to Emu, but when I think about the events, you know, how we're going to tackle this in chronological order, I just can't imagine we beat Blackbeard before Emu. It seems like Emu is going to be an opponent that Blackbeard and Luffy take down together, maybe not like willingly, right? Maybe like, you know, they're fighting in different rooms or something, or different dimensions, yada yada. But I feel like together, because they're both D-Clan members, they're gonna have to work together to some extent to take down Emu, and then afterwards we go to Laugh Tale, and that's where we're gonna have the whole big shebang. And then that's the end of the story. Like, it's hard for me to think about a world where we beat Blackbeard before Emu, because I feel like Blackbeard is required as another member of the D-Clan. I think that's why I've always had that mindset. Like, even when we saw Emu up on the empty throne, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, it's the final villain. But there were a lot of people who also said, wait a minute. Maybe this is going to be like a tag team situation, which is where I'm at.
Yeah, I think we will eventually get to that point, because that would be really cool. The two leading Ds, Luda PNR, aka Dawn and Dusk, they have this great theory as to what D means. Of course, we think that it means dawn, like bringing the dawn, but then that's like Luffy's side, Joy Boy's side. But then if you're going through like Davy Jones, Rocks, and Blackbeard's side of the Ds, that could be like Dusk, which is where like their name Dawn and Dusk comes from, which is like hilarious. So it's like which side of the D is going to prevail? Well, it's like they have to work together to overcome Emu, and then it's like, okay, now let the Ds settle it. And that would be really cool if it happens at Laugh Tale, which is where the One Piece actually is. So I wouldn't be against Luffy and Blackbeard working together to take down Emu, and then they like fight it out. Yes, that would be like Naruto, but it already is like Naruto anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think Kishimoto and Oda were both trying to tell the same story, but just Kishimoto finished it faster, so it is what it is. But what do you think about, instead of them like defeating Emu together, what if they get to a point of where Blackbeard takes Emu's power? Because like he could do that seemingly. I mean, he could take devil fruits. And it seems like Emu doesn't have like a devil fruit. They have something else, maybe the devil itself. But it still seems like maybe he can take that power with the Yami Yami no Mi, because, you know, Rocks himself said that in order to take over the world government or whatever, bring it down, he would need 2 devil fruits. And it seems like the Yami Yami no Mi is one of them, right?
I would say so. I do think the Yami Yami no Mi is going to be one of those devil fruits. As far as Blackbeard taking Emu's powers, I agree with that. Kind of like an obscure fun fact that I just love revisiting over and over. It's like the meme of that guy milking the cow. But I come back to this one fun fact, and it's that Blackbeard's original name, before he got the Marshal or Blackbeard or anything, Oda in Databook Green said that his name was supposed to be Everything D Teach, which is a really dumb name. You know, calling somebody everything, it's like, okay, that's very anime, very silly. But it's like, okay, like, let's play with that literally. Maybe he was supposed to have literally everything in the series. Like all the powers, all the devil fruits, all the magic. So Blackbeard taking over Emu's powers by the end, that being, you know, one of the main factors as to why he's helping Luffy in the first place, I think it'd be awesome. And that would propel Blackbeard to end game villain status. Because right now, you know, we expect Blackbeard to have like tricks in his bag. Oh, he scarred Shanks somehow. How'd he do it? He's got to be strong when he like sleeps, or, you know, he has like a second personality. There's something there, but let's take that and times it by 10. Let's give him the Emu powers or multiple devil fruits beyond 3, 4, 5. And then, yeah, he'll be the final villain. That's kind of where I put him right now, which is a lot of Blackbeard hype, but if he's going to be that endgame guy, we need him to get like that upgrade.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely not strong enough to be the final villain yet, at least on paper. And whatever power Emu has, I'm assuming it's not like their inherent ability. It's like a gained ability, probably. I mean, we could talk about where it came from in another video. We've already kind of talked about it a lot, but there's nothing concrete out there yet. So I assume that this can be taken. And I guess in a way that would also maybe post a parallel to like Davy Jones and Rocks too, because while we don't really know much about Davy Jones, Mr. Morge, we actually talked about this in another video, he speculates that like Davy Jones was also Dami Reversy the way that Rocks was, and I think that's very likely. However, like the third in line, Blackbeard, instead of him becoming Dami Reversy, he just becomes the demon. Like he becomes the devil himself by taking Emu's power, and then tries to use it not for good necessarily, but just in a different way than Emu does. And then as for how Luffy stands up against that, you know, we've talked about this a lot, I guess Gear 6 or whatever, or the True Awakening.
Gear 6, Gear Death.
Yeah, Gear Death, black versus black. Because speaking of the colors, Luna PN pointed out that, you know, Dami Reversy, the thing that Emu does to make people demons, that's based off of the game Reversy. Reversy or Othello. And when you start off in that game, you have like 4 pieces on the board, and you have like white diagonally and black diagonally. And if you look at that final spread of all of the people that are left in the hunt for the one piece, in the center, just like how the Othello pieces are, you have Luffy, Kobe, Blackbeard, and Emu. Do you think there's anything there?
I think there could be. I think Oda, by that point in time, kind of knew exactly what he was going to do with Emu's powers, and it seems like Emu's going to be a sort of game master kind of opponent, where I don't think their powers stop with Othello. I think they're going to have way more than that too. But yeah, that right there could be a good hint at Dami Reversying one of these characters, one of the 4. And when it comes to Blackbeard getting Dometer, you know, having these demonic powers, a lot of people looked at God Valley and said, oh, there could be a parallel current day with Luffy and Kobe taking on Blackbeard, which would make sense. You know, Kobe definitely has a bone to pick with them. Luffy has a bone to pick with them. So if that's the case, that's cool. We just have to explain how Kobe's at that level. Because yeah, Kobe's strong, you know, relatively, you know, look at everybody else in the One Piece world. Yeah, Kobe's like up there somewhere, but strong enough to fight Blackbeard alongside Gearfifth. I don't know if he's there yet. So, you know, I feel like we're gonna have to explain how Kobe's on this stage, but I'm down for it though.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, because it does look like Kobe is being set up for this big grand role at the end. And if we are going back to God Valley, the equivalents of that time to Luffy and Kobe were Garp and Roger, because that's what Oda does. He keeps telling the same story over and over. History repeats itself. So it's like Kobe and Luffy teaming up to take on Blackbeard. Why would Luffy even need Kobe at that point? And considering that not much time is going to pass, it's like realistically Kobe shouldn't be strong enough to even take down like a Yonko commander, to be honest, let alone like Blackbeard with the devil power. But maybe you'll have some kind of Shonen MC end of series random power up that we see over and over again in these series. But so what if Davy Jones, the guy that Rox loves, you know, he descended from him, the guy from the Void Century who's said to be the king of the world, or the former king of the world, probably the king of the Great Kingdom, what if he's actually like still alive? And I say that because when we actually first find out about Davy Jones, it's through Robin, way back on Long Ring Lawnland. And she says to Chopper that he's a pirate from long ago who was cursed by the devil to live in the depths of the seafloor, where it is said that he yet lives to this day. That's the legend, and any sunken ships or treasure get locked away in Davy Jones' locker. So in our previous video, we talked about how, you know, he was the king during the Void Century, and it's very possible that Emu overthrew Davy Jones by Dami reversing him. You know, the same way that it happened with Rox, as we saw in God Valley. And if that is the case, that lines up with what Robin was saying. Cursed by the devil, Dami Reversy, that's the same thing. And another reason that makes me think that he still could be alive is because, you know, we also talked about Oda keeps telling us the Void Century story over and over again through all of these arcs. And a lot of the time when the king has been overthrown, they're secretly like still alive. You know, like Gonfall, Riku, Sukiyaki. I'm sure there's more examples, but those are the 3 big ones. So like, why not Davy Jones? I mean, if he is still alive at the bottom of the seafloor or whatever, through some devil magic, I don't know, maybe he got the perpetual youth surgery performed on him as well at some point, and now he just can't die. And he is Dami Reversy perpetually down there or something. I don't know. But long story short, he could also be the man marked by flames. But I'll let you guys, just initially, what do you think about that stuff?
I think it's very interesting because it could be like the only way to stop him back then was to throw him in the ocean, and if he had like a devil fruit power, then he might just be stuck down there, right? That's like kind of the idea. Actually, my first ever video that I did on YouTube, well before I knew that I would, you know, get any views on any videos, was I did a video that maybe Kaido is just stuck in the water right now because he has a fish fruit, technically. And we saw with Jack that because even though he's a fishman, he has a devil fruit, so he was just stuck at the bottom of the ocean. He wasn't dying, he wasn't drowning or anything, he was just waiting, he couldn't move. And so with all this talk about Davy Jones' locker, you know, whenever you send someone to Davy Jones' locker, you like send them overboard so they drown and all that. I'm just wondering, like, could Davy be somebody who has a devil fruit? He got tossed in the water, and he's just been down there at the very bottom waiting all this time for somebody to find him. And then that also makes me wonder, maybe Emu knew that, and now Davy got locked away. So it's not just that you got to get down there. It's that you got to get down there and get past some certain things. It also makes me wonder, could this be what's under the Florian Triangle? Because if that's really Emu, if Emu is the Thriller Bark monster, maybe this is why, it's been protected. We heard that, I think it was like over 100 ships a year would go missing even before Thriller Bark went there. So it's like, we know for all eternity there was something weird going on with Florian Triangle. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's where Davy is. And Emu's like, I can't let anyone find this guy. So I really like the idea. The parallels with like Sukiyaki and Gonfall and Riku and all them, I think those are great. I could definitely see Davy being alive. So maybe he is just stuck down there with some important devil fruit, and he's just waiting. I don't know how he would live for 800 years, without eating or something, but hey, if you're that powerful, maybe it doesn't matter.
There is a chance, and this would negate him for the main Mark by Flames theory, but there is a chance he's like actually frozen in stone, which could help explain why Blackbeard wanted Boa Hancock's fruit, even though Boa explained like, hey, like just because you get my fruit doesn't mean that you can unthaw your people. So maybe Blackbeard didn't know that beforehand, and he was going for the fruit because he thought he could do it. Like, Davy Jones is down there, they're underwater, but they're also stoned. Like, they're a statue right now.
We still don't know why Blackbeard went for that fruit, right? And you think back to, like, Rox's fake name was Rox, right? It's, like, right there. Poneglyphs are stones that tell us all the important information.
Oh, wow.
And you think about Boa, like, it's not just that, well, I should say Hancock. I always call her Boa, but Hancock, is technically your name, but she's the one who, like, loves Luffy. I feel like that just builds, like, a really, big importance to her. It's like, okay, that's going to be, she's not a nobody, I guess is what I'm getting at. And you also think, like, she's snake-themed, and the red line was called the serpent soaked in blood, so that's another, like, stone thing that it's just really weird that ties to all this. It's important. So there's a lot of, like, stone entities in One Piece that we still are, like, wondering what the truth behind them is. So I really like that idea, Sai, honestly. That feels like a good one.
Wow. So him going after the Hancock's fruit, it could be just to unstone Davy Jones. That would be wild if that is ultimately what that reveal is, because I have no other explanation as to why he wanted that fruit. And clearly Oda made a big deal out of it, because normally, he would have just off-screened it or had somebody tell us, like, oh yeah, Blackbeard apparently invaded Amazon Lily and tried to go after Hancock's fruit. But no, he showed us it. It was extended, so there was a specific reason for that, and that would be wild if that is it.
It's funny because, like, initially my idea was that maybe he would unstone the people on the steps to Marie Joie, which I don't know if anybody remembers that. But
yeah. The Holy Knight theory came from that, I guess, right?
Yeah, because there's like a bunch of statues of like giant people on the sides leading up to the Holy Land, and it's like, oh, like maybe those are real people back in the day that got turned to stone. And then of course, like in the anime opening, that's kind of whatever, but sometimes there's Easter eggs in there. But when the Holy Knights are like introduced with like Garling and Shamrock and Gunko, you can actually see that the backdrop are the statues, and it's like, okay, that's interesting because we've only seen those statues once. Like that's like a one-time endeavor. So the fact that they chose that out of any other shot, it's like, okay, that's fun. That's fun. It's gonna be something there.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Another potential connection to all of this, I think, is going back to the serpent soaked in blood idea, and like maybe Davy was the king of the ancient kingdom or whatever. Well, if we go back to the mural, if we just make a couple assumptions here that maybe Davy was the king of the ancient kingdom, aka maybe like the first world, or at least towards the end of the first world maybe, and that would mean that maybe Davy was controlling the serpent of hellfire or whatever. And so if the serpent of hellfire ended up becoming the red line, like got turned to stone, then maybe that's part of it, is like if Blackbeard really is trying to take his throne back, you could say, like trying to retake Davy's throne. Maybe one of the steps is like, well, I got to get the serpent at my disposal that, Davy once had, and so that means turning the red line back into that serpent, if it really is. I think it's a little hairy there, because basically, what did Marco say? That Whitebeard was like, oh yeah, the Lunarians lived on the red line way back when, so it's like, that would tell us maybe the red line's always been there, so I'm not sure how the serpent necessarily ties into it, but I mean, we're wondering where that serpent is. There's this giant red line called the Serpent Soaked in Blood by the Giants, and we're now in Elbaf learning about all this, where there's the mural. feel like there's a connection there. So maybe that's it. Blackbeard just wants that snake back, you know?
He wants the snake, brother. The anaconda.
So right now, like in the actual story, like once we come back to Elbaf, current time, as the Straw Hats are at Elbaf, it seems like the Blackbeard pirates are like attacking Mary Joie. I know that's crazy because it hasn't been stated in the story yet, but it's heavily implied. When Emu takes over Gunko, like shortly before we go into the long flashback, they say that the Holy Land is a sea of fire right now and that they need greater numbers. And we thought maybe, oh, that's like the revolutionaries attacking them again, but it's like, well, they already attacked them. Are they coming back for seconds? Probably not. And considering that we're coming off of God Valley's flashback with, you know, the whole rocks revelation and all that stuff, I think it would make sense that Blackbeard is attacking Mary Joie. Now, maybe not Blackbeard directly himself, but the Blackbeard pirates. Now, as to why they're attacking them, well, I mean, it makes sense. They've been setting this up the whole time, right? And I guess this explains why the Holy Knights are suddenly coming to Elbaf now, trying to recruit Loki to the Holy Knights, trying to get the Elbaf warriors to make a makeshift army. But other than that, here's a fun thing to think about. And I want to know your thoughts on this. What if the real big spark for this was them having Garp? Because we saw that whole thing with Garp fighting out Kiji. We thought he killed him, but he didn't. I mean, we didn't think that he killed him. Oda tried to make us think that he died, but they just have him captive now. But they also have Pudding, Big Mom's daughter, who has the devil fruit that can like take in memories and stuff. What if they had her take Garp's memories of God Valley out, and then they looked at what happened and they were like, oh crap, we're upset now. What do you think about it?
I mean, you know, ever since the Blackbeard Pirates took Pudding, that was a prominent theory. Just saying, yeah, Pudding's going to extract somebody's memories, or Pudding's going to read the poneglyphs, because outside of that, there's no reason to get Pudding. So I do think that Blackbeard could do both. Yeah, if she awakens the third eye, we'll see what that looks like. She can read the poneglyphs for Blackbeard. But I also think that since they have Garp there, why not see what happened? I mean, Blackbeard should obviously know that, you know, Garp was there for his father's demise. Whether he knows about God Valley entirely or not, he knows that Garp is the hero of God Valley. So yeah, extract the memories, see what's happening. And I don't think Blackbeard's the type of guy that would be impulsive, like, oh, they killed my dad, let's go up there. I think he would do it just for strategies. He'd be like, okay, like this is how the Gorsei functions, this is what we're fighting. That Reversy thing seems pretty bad, blah, blah, blah. I think that is the route Blackbeard would take. And as far as like Blackbeard being the one up at the Holy Land, I like it, mainly because that would like quickly parallel the whole, oh, I'll be back line when Rock said that to Emu in the flower room. I could just already imagine Blackbeard doing that to Emu and saying like, hey, I am back. I told you I'd be here again. And, you know, even though it's not Rock's, it's like, oh, it's his son. So, you know, it kind of works.
So Rox also raided Mary Joie back in the day. That's when he met Harold. Yeah. But another thing that Rox did when he was there, straight up kill a freaking admiral.
Is he gonna kill an admiral? Is that what you're asking me?
I think Blackbeard is gonna follow in his footsteps and straight up kill an admiral at Mary Joie?
No, I think we're at that point in the story where like Oda wouldn't want to kill a character like that. I can't imagine. Like I'm thinking about the admirals right now, right? We have Akainu, Kizaru, Green Bull, Fujitora, Kuzan if you would include him. And out of all of them, if I had to kill one, I think it would be Kuzan. Just because he seems like such a good guy, or like, yo, like he's taking the Gin from Bleach role. Or like he might betray Blackbeard eventually, but Blackbeard's like, oh, I saw this coming already, Kuzan. And then he stabs him or something. Like, I just can't imagine the admirals generally dying at this point in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they are either. I mean, they could have a fake out death. Oda does that all the time. I mean, if it's not Kuzan, I think it could have been Kizaru. That would have been really interesting since, you know, he's coming off of that big character arc from Egghead. But I do think they're all going to live, because we talked about this a couple of years ago, actually, with Brago and King of Lightning, about how I'm pretty sure we're going to see the three original admirals, Kuzan, Kizaru, and Akainu, like, team up with Luffy. Like, that's, oh, yeah. I think we're gonna get at least one panel or page of that, so they can't die before that happens. But we could get an admiral fake out death, because I do think that Blackbeard knows that Kuzan isn't like on his side. Like, he's not that stupid. Like, he has to know there's something up.
If he was surprised though, that'd be so funny. He's like, Kuzan, no, I trusted you. We're friends.
I mean, that could happen too, but I don't think so.
It would be funny though.
No, it would be hilarious if he's genuinely shocked by that. But other than that, they do have some other aces up their sleeve. Because we were talking about how they have Pudding, and, you know, on the surface, it just seems like they're going to use her to read the Poneglyphs, because without her, they don't have a way of reading them. And she hasn't even awakened her third eye yet, so we're still waiting on that. Maybe a cover page will tell us that as well. But another thing that they have is Katarina Devon touching Saturn back on Egghead. And now that Saturn's dead, there's some things you can do with that. Now, we don't know if they ever made it public that Saturn has died and that Garling has taken his place. As far as I know, we don't have any updates on if the public knows about that or anything. I don't think Big News Morgan made any reports about that. So we thought, oh, they're just going to impersonate Saturn with her mythical Zoan Ninetales fruit ability and, I don't know, make commands or something like that. But what if there's a subversion to that, the way with Pudding reading Garp's memories? What if instead of just using him to make orders or impersonating him, what if they use his body to, like, travel through the Abyss pentagram? Because, you know, it was stated by, I think, Killingham or Summers in Elbaf recently, where they were like, only people with the mark can pass through those Abyss pentagrams, as they call it in the Viz. I go by the Viz because it's just easier. I don't know how that would work, because does it, like, create a literal facsimile of the tattoo that they get? Because there's some kind of supernatural ability implanted into the tattoo. It's not just, like, inked on there and then it just works. I'm assuming it doesn't seem that way. There's some kind of, especially with what we saw of Harold in the recent chapter, it seems like there's some magic going on there. So unless the devil fruit, like, completely 100% replicates you, even with the magic circle, a mark on you, which I think is a possibility for sure, that would be a really interesting way for them to utilize Saturn, because that could be how they're at Marriage Well right now. They just become Saturn, and then they have the ability to, I don't know, create the mark or go through the pentagram or something, and then they're just going back and forth like that. Even if you disagree with that, which is fine, because I'm not even fully on board with that, what do you just think Katarina Devon copying Saturn is going to lead to?
That's a really tough one, because I don't even know. It's like you said, like, if they made Saturn's death public, it's useless. Like, you can't go to a country and, you know, cosplay Saturn. Nobody's gonna believe it. The Gorosei, obviously, they're gonna see Saturn. They're like, okay, he's dead. We know this already. And then even as far as, like, the Shallow Sea contract, because you get your powers from Emu, I doubt that if Devon was able to transform into Saturn, she'd be able to use it. Like, surely Emu's like, wait a minute, why is there, like, my power over there with the Blackbeard Pirates? Like, I can sense my energy. Maybe I cut that off, or maybe, you know, I sever the contract. I just can't see what the benefits would be. And people have said seraphims, like, oh, like, you know, Saturn can control the seraphims. I'm like, okay, I agree with that. But if that was their goal, why not get them while at Egghead? Like why not just two birds with one stone? Maybe they want to wait for when the Gorosei aren't there, but it's like, I mean, they were in and out, man. Like, they could just teleport. So that's so tough for me to, like, decide. I think this is one of the few things where I'm just, like, actually stumped. I'm like a chicken in the middle of the road. I'm like, I don't know where to go with this one, but it's got to be useful though.
No, I mean, it's super useful. It is a toolbox of options there. But I forgot about the controlling the seraphims option. That's really interesting too. That's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, but, like, we're at that point in time where it's like the seraphim, they're strong, but I almost feel like they're gonna be strong fodder opponents. Like, oh, there's these really strong guys in the final war. We need somebody to occupy them. Go, seraphim! Stall them out for like 30 chapters. That's what they feel like to me. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we need somebody for the Grand Fleet to fight.
Yeah, Grand Fleet, or like maybe the warlords come in and they're like, oh, who do the warlords fight? Well, let me tell you, they fight the warlords.
There you go. Warlords beat warlords. Okay, I like that. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. What do you think's going on with Katarina Devon copying Saturn? Do you think the Blackbeard Pirates are at Marriage Well right now? And anything else, let me know. And if you liked it, please give it a like. Check out Sai's channel, subscribe to him. Link will be in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace out, guys.